Is it an angel or a demon? Today we're going to talk about one of the angels of omnipotence. Welcome to the channel, everyone. My name's Fola, and here on Deep Mind Squared we talk all things bridging mental wellness and spirituality. And as a witchy nurse, I feel really called to share this information for people who identify as nurses, maybe those like caregiver, healers, whatever you want to call yourself. And I've been really just feeling around with what I'd like to kind of take the direction of the channel and really use it as a platform to share my experiences and what I feel are important aspects. So check out some of the videos. Let me know in the comments too where you feel like maybe you'd like to hear more content or more topics discussed. But today I wanted to talk about experience that I've had engaging with an entity or being called Elubatel. Before we get into all that though, I invite you to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you're updated on future video releases. So as you know, I like to read, and I read many different things or, engage in a variety of topics that many people, depending on their background, might not be very open to. But I really am this truth seeker, and I just like knowing about people's experiences and what's really underlying what we've been told about certain beliefs or things that might be going on in the world. And so I was reading a bit of information and just kind of opening my mind to these different forms of angelic beings, one of which is Elubatel. And Elubatel is known as an angel of omnipotence. Omnipotence? I don't know, however you say that word. Omnipotence meaning basically having unlimited power. Elubatel is mentioned in the 6th and 7th books of Moses around the 19th century. Apparently comes from Moses himself and highlights a bunch of different ways in which he was able to overcome the Egyptians, perform the magic before the Pharaoh, and basically save the Israelite people. Now, I haven't read the full text or anything. You can easily find this online, but the angel Elubatel works very closely and oftentimes would be summoned or invoked alongside two other angels, Ebuhuel and Atuesuel. And there's some mention that you could utilize those three even to conjure up some other greater entities and beings such as Leviathan. People often use these angels in forms of gaining success and money, different form of wealth. I guess it really depends. If you think about what power is energy, and money is a form of energy as well. So it totally makes sense why people would be connecting with this. Well, when I was going through this phase of reading and learning, I was coming across other people's experiences of this angel and how it was potentially a demon or this sort of darker entity. And oftentimes people shared how when they did work with this entity or this angel, they had extreme periods of depression and just overwhelm emotionally. So it had me really wondering what exactly is this being and how come there's this judgment? So of course in my very novice approach to gematria or looking at the meanings of words and the relations to other words and things, especially within the Hebrew Judaic sort of path, I went on a little bit of a search and was breaking down the word Elubatel, which the way I perceived it, connecting the last word or that suffix with El, meaning a connection with God. And of course, I could be very incorrect about this, but also when we look at the other aspects of the word Elubatel, it's Bath meaning daughter, and there's other sort of correspondences to this. But what I interpreted this as was the daughters of God, which I guess if you kind of think about it, angels are in a way these created forms from God. They are in fact birthed from or created from the great intelligence. then I was going down this like rabbit hole of, oh, of course, the feminine energy, daughters, woman, whatever, would be seen in like this negative light. And if you work with any beings or entities, any deities that tend to have like a more feminine energy, there is oftentimes this concept of like destruction or chaos. And yeah, I can see then why that might be seen in like a negative light. So I'll get a bit into, my experience, because I was reading about this, just trying to understand a bit more what's going on. What does this like angel of omnipotence, oh my gosh, I could never say that word. This angel of omnipotence mean to me? And, is that something that is worth kind of looking into a bit deeper? So, of course, when you start reading things, my parents would always tell me, like, when you open your mind, then things start to come. And it's so true. So you definitely want to remain grounded when you're going through any form of like metaphysical or spiritual like learnings. I think this is where like shamanism comes into play. It can be really helpful because it helps us to like stay in the body, stay grounded. Otherwise we can get, I know for me, get really up in the head, and that can be super overwhelming. But one night I was just like sleeping, trying to rest, but it was like, you sometimes go into states where it's like you don't really sleep. So here I was, and I think my head was like actually covered by the blanket, but I could see like out of the blanket, if that makes any sense at all. Um, and I just remember all of a sudden having this like being kind of come into the room and onto the bed. And as soon as this happened, I knew that it was this angel, Elubatel. Like, I just instantly was like, okay, I know what this presence is. It made itself known. So, of course, my very fearful state in the dark, which happens, started to like show up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like what's going on? But I couldn't move. So, yay, sleep paralysis happens. What a lovely, lovely experience if you've had that. It's not very, very lovely at all. But there I was laying, and this like sort of like dark, I guess, entity or shadowy figure is how I would describe it. I couldn't like really see it, but I just felt its like presence. It had a very strong, like powerful presence. And it was like on top of me, but kind of towards my legs more so, kind of creating a bit of distance, which I'm like very grateful for that. And so I was like, okay, let me like do the things that I feel help me to really protect my energy. And I think it was the first thing I chose was to send like energy, like Reiki, or just this like, protective sort of bubble around me to protect. And so I was like sending this out, like, because I couldn't move like physically, being in that like sleep paralysis mode. And that really didn't do anything. It was just like, okay, the thing's still there. I still like am wondering what's going on. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna like just start praying, because that's something that I do. And there's some like Latin prayers that I use for protection. And in this particular case, I was just like repeating like Jesus, like, okay, Jesus, like hold the space, send like the support and protection. And nothing. And I think I even tried, if I recall, I was like trying to speak the words out loud, but I couldn't. Of course, because like, am I sleeping? Am I awake? I have no idea what's going on. You get into these weird altered states, and it's just weird, chaotic mess. As I started to like say like Jesus and try this prayer, which is something that I've grown up very strongly to believe like that can be of help, the angel basically was like, no, like it didn't laugh, but it was like, that's not what's going to work here. And I was like, well, I don't know what else to do. And we started having this communication like very briefly. It was basically like a telepathic, is how I would describe it. And it just instantly said like, you know what you need to say. And it started to repeat the tetragrammaton, that four-letter name of God from the Hebrew or Judaic path. And as soon as it said this to me telepathically, I just started repeating like those four letters, and it was like profound. All of a sudden, it's as though like everything expanded on the bed, like the blanket that was kind of over me, and this protection came over myself. And I wasn't shrinking, but it's kind of like had that perception of like me shrinking, everything getting larger and more expansive. And that was like the key, is how I would describe it, to this sense of power or like protection. Even though this being came, it had no like intentions to harm me. But my lack of understanding, the lack of knowledge that I had about it, created this fear. And it came to show or teach, like, focus on like that name of God. That is ultimately the protection. If at any point any fear comes up, know that you can like create this sense of expansion, protection, and space in order to like hold yourself in. And with that, as soon as this happened, I started like kind of like chanting that name in my head. The being's like, good, like you got it. And it like just went, it left. And then I like woke up later. Of course, that always happens. I hate that. I hate that part when like some weird thing happens at nighttime, if it's happened to you, and then it's like you're awake, and then all of a sudden you're out again, and then you wake up and it's like daylight. Yeah, that's just really a really weird, odd thing. But that was a bit of what I wanted to share. You know, these beings, angels, entities, whatever it might be that you're like feeling called to connect with. Sometimes we can have some pretty intense experiences, but ultimately, I truly do believe like they are there to teach us, you know, a bit more about who we are, about our power, our sense of like personal power, how we can show up in the world, and how we can also utilize the different energies, connecting to like the divine source for protection, for love and connection, to really start to like manifest or create the life that we want to live. And so, whatever judgments you might have, I guess I'm just really encouraging you today to try and like see it from a different perspective. And you know, we can continually put up walls and like be afraid of things, but it comes to a point where if you're repeating the same patterns and struggles, then maybe it's worth experimenting in some different way or having that new perspective. And obviously that will look different for everyone. So you need to listen to like your path and what works for you. There's some things that I'm still in my path, like, yeah, I ain't gonna ever like touch that. Like, it's just not my thing. But, you know, no judgment there. I think, you know, they talk about like the left-hand path, the right-hand path, and there are these preconceived notions about what that means, but they really are like one and the same, just these like opposing sort of mirrors to each other, that they need each other in order to like survive. So yeah, have an open mind, an open heart, and just see what learnings can come to you. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to like and share it with anyone you think might be interested in hearing. And yeah, like I said, let me know in the comments what type of content you'd like to hear about. I personally really feel called to like step more into what I enjoy talking about. A lot of that is around like magic and all the fun, weird things that can happen around like altered states, not just the psychedelics. But how do we then utilize that to like come to a sense of self and acceptance and healing on our life journey? Because that's ultimately why we're here, is like the universe expanding on itself, continually like, you know, seeking out that state of like perfection, which I found out the other day listening to this really neat like podcast, that that Latin word perfection is all about like coming to completion. That's it. It's like it wants to complete itself. So perfection's not this like negative view, but anyways, I could probably talk about this in another video. Like, I really like resonated with me of, yeah, we're not reaching for this thing beyond us, but in a way we are just continually expanding so that we can reach that state of completion. And whether or not we do or not, I guess that's the other question. Yeah, so you all take care, and I will see you in another video real soon. Bye.